I never thought I'd be the person posting here, but after what happened at Christmas lunch last month, I need to get this out. Maybe for validation, maybe just to stop replaying it in my head at 3 a.m. I don't know anymore. 3 sentences. That's all it took to undo 15 years of sacrifice. Sarah, maybe it's time you stopped relying on this family and figured out your own life. My mother said it clearly, deliberately, loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. 23 people. Aunts, uncles, cousins, my 2 brothers with their perfect families. The turkey sat half-carved in front of my father. Someone's fork scraped against china in the silence that followed. I know how this sounds. The entitled daughter gets called out at family dinner, right? But hear me out. I wasn't asking them for money. I wasn't living in their basement. I wasn't the one who'd needed bail money twice, or the one who defaulted on a loan dad co-signed, or the one whose wedding mom had remortgaged the house to pay for. I was the one who'd been giving. For 15 years. My Aunt Linda looked down at her plate. Uncle Robert suddenly became very interested in refilling his wine glass. My brother Marcus, golden child Marcus with his lawyer wife and his lake house, he just nodded slightly, like Mom had finally said what everyone was thinking. That nod. That's what I remember most. Not anger. I didn't feel angry at that moment. Something else clicked into place. Something cold and precise, like tumblers in a lock finally aligning. Clarity. I looked around that table at faces I'd known my entire life. Faces I'd sacrificed for. Protected. Covered for. Bailed out, both literally and figuratively. And not one of them met my eyes. The silence stretched. Mom was waiting for me to apologize, to explain, to justify myself the way I always did. I could see it in the way she sat back in her chair, arms crossed, that familiar expression of righteous disappointment. Maybe I should have just stayed quiet. Nodded. Let it go like I'd let everything else go for the past decade and a half. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I stood up, carefully folded my napkin, and placed it beside my untouched plate. "You're right, Mom," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, calm, almost pleasant. I should stop relying on this family. I didn't know then that I had all the ammunition I needed. It was already compiled, dated, and documented. 15 years of evidence sitting in a fireproof safe in my apartment. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were about who'd been relying on whom. But that realization wouldn't come until much later. For now, they just watched me gather my coat and walk out into the December cold, probably thinking I'd be back by New Year's, apologetic and compliant like always. They had no idea what I'd just set in motion. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could turn the key. The house glowed behind me, warm light spilling from every window. Through the dining room, I could see movement, people standing, probably moving to the living room for dessert like nothing had happened. From the outside, we looked like a Hallmark movie. The Caldwell family. Big colonial in the suburbs, perfectly maintained lawn. Those white string lights Dad puts up every Thanksgiving. Mom hosts a book club. Dad golfs on Saturdays. My brothers both married well and gave them grandchildren. Picture perfect. But if you grew up inside those walls, you learned to read the temperature. To know which version of Mom you were getting before you even walked through the door. To measure your words, calculate your responses, predict which topic would set off which person. I'm Sarah, 34. Senior project manager at a tech firm downtown. I manage teams of 20, handle million-dollar budgets, negotiate with executives who think crying is a power move. At work, people describe me as unflappable. Diplomatic. Get it done. At home, I'm still the fixer. The translator. The one who smooths things over. Or I was. My mother, Patricia, is what you'd call the emotional thermostat of our family. If you've grown up as the family thermostat reader, you know exactly what I mean. When she's warm, everyone relaxes. Jokes land. Dad hums while he does dishes. When she's cold, everyone contracts. Conversations become minefields. My father starts sentences with, "Well, your mother thinks," and trails off into silence. She's never wrong. Ever. Even when she is, the family narrative restructures itself around her version of events until somehow, magically, she was right all along. And if you push back, you don't exist. Not yelling, not drama, just erasure. She'll talk around you, through you, about you like you're not in the room until you apologize for whatever crime you've committed by disagreeing with her. My father, Robert, is the classic enabler. Don't upset your mother was the family motto growing up. Still is. He's not a bad man. He's just chosen peace over justice so many times that I don't think he remembers there's a difference anymore. He sees everything, acknowledges nothing. Then there's Marcus. 41. The golden child, though we're too old to call it that anymore. Corporate attorney, married to Vanessa, who comes from old money. They have 3 kids in private school. Marcus has borrowed money from our parents 4 times that I know of, probably more. He totaled Mom's car when he was 17, and somehow I got grounded for not stopping him from taking it. He's never paid them back a dime, but he's the success story. The one they brag about. My other brother, Tyler, is 37. He's harder to read. Works in sales, does okay, married with 2 kids. But there's something in the way he watches me sometimes. Like he's waiting for me to fail. Like my struggles validate something for him. When I lost my job 3 years ago, he actually smiled. Not big, just a little curl at the corner of his mouth. Finally, I heard him mutter to his wife. She's not so perfect. I was never perfect. I was just useful. Mom raised me on this idea. Strong women carry the family. They sacrifice. They put everyone else first. They don't complain. For years, I thought she meant all women. I didn't realize she meant only me. The weird thing is, I succeeded despite, or maybe because of, all of it. I learned to anticipate needs, manage expectations, and solve problems before they became crises. Turns out those are valuable skills in corporate America. I make good money. I have my own life, my own apartment, my own friends who don't treat me like the family IT department for emotional labor. But every Sunday dinner, every holiday, every family crisis, I shrink back into that role. The responsible one. The one who shows up. The one who helps. I turned the key. The engine hummed to life. If I'd known what they were planning, the conversation they'd had before I arrived, the consensus they'd reached about my situation, I would have acted sooner. But sometimes you need the knife in your back to finally see who's holding it. My mother always said, family takes care of family. That's what separates us from people who end up alone. She said it like a blessing, like wisdom passed down through generations. I didn't realize it only applied to me. I kept records. Not because I planned any of this. It started as a simple organization. I'm a project manager, documentation is reflex. Receipts in folders. Emails saved. Bank statements filed. Just habit. If you've ever had a family bank account, you understand. You start tracking because you need to remember who you already helped, what you already gave, when you can reasonably say no without being selfish. Let me show you what 15 years looks like on paper. Sacrifice 1. Marcus's legal situation. 7 years ago, Marcus got a DUI. Not his first, but the first one that stuck. The lawyer fees alone were $15,000. Dad had co-signed on Marcus's boat, yes, boat, and couldn't liquidate fast enough. Mom called me at work, voice tight. Your brother needs help. Family helps family. I transferred $15,000 from my savings account. The account I'd been building for a down payment on a house. I was 27. Marcus promised to pay me back as soon as the bonus came through. The bonus came through. I got a text. Thanks again, sis. We're square, right? We were not square. But what do you say to that? No, actually, you still owe me 15 grand? That makes you a difficult one. The one who keeps score. 2 months ago, at Thanksgiving, Marcus made a joke about me still renting. Some of us actually invest in property, Sarah. Vanessa laughed into her wine glass. I didn't mention that his investment property would have been foreclosed on if I hadn't wired him $8,000 3 years ago when his tenant stopped paying. Another loan. Another I'll get you back. Current total from Marcus, $31,500. Not counting the smaller amounts, the $200 here, $500 there. When I mention it once, just once, Mom got that cold look. We never asked you to play savior, Sarah. That was your choice. Sacrifice 2. The house. This one's more complicated. And more important. 6 years ago, my parents were in trouble. Real trouble. Dad's business partner embezzled, left him holding worthless contracts and angry clients. They were going to lose the house. The house Mom had decorated in Architectural Digest, the house where she hosted her book club and charity events, the house that proved Patricia Caldwell had made it. They needed $120,000. Fast. I didn't have $120,000. But I had excellent credit, a stable income, and a very good relationship with my bank. I also had a lawyer friend, Jessica, who'd helped me with contracts before. We worked out a deal. I took out a loan, secured against my retirement accounts, my car, everything I had, and I bought a 30% stake in the house. Legal, documented, notarized. The money kept them from foreclosure. The arrangement meant I'd eventually recoup my investment when they sold, or when estates get settled. Jessica insisted on adding a reversion clause. If they tried to sell the house without my consent, or if they refinanced without including me, or if they transferred ownership, my stake would convert to a lien with interest. Just in case, she said. Families get weird about money and property. I thought she was being paranoid. I told her my parents would never screw me over. She printed the documents anyway. I've been doing this for 15 years, Sarah. Trust me on this one. That paperwork would become the most important thing I owned. For 6 years, I've also been auto-paying their property taxes. $14,000 annually. It started as just help us through this rough patch. 3 months, maybe 6. Then it became normal. Expected. They stopped mentioning it. I think they actually forgot. I didn't forget. Every January, $14,000 leaves my account. Quiet auto-pays they pretended not to know about. Total, $204,000 in the house. Not counting the property taxes. Dad knows. He signs the annual documentation. But we don't talk about it. In the family narrative, they got through a tough time on their own. Self-made. Resilient. Sacrifice 3. The next generation. My nephew, Marcus's oldest, wanted to go to a private high school. The kind with the rowing team and the college counselors who get kids into Ivies. The tuition was $35,000 a year. Marcus and Vanessa couldn't quite make it work, with the boat payments and the vacation home expenses. So guess who got the call? I paid 2 years of tuition. $70,000. Because he's such a bright kid and you don't have children, you don't understand the investment. Last month, that same nephew didn't acknowledge me at the Christmas lunch. Didn't say hello, didn't make eye contact. 16 years old. Already learning who matters and who doesn't. I wanted to belong. That's the truth of it. I did all of this because I thought if I proved myself useful enough, valuable enough, indispensable enough, I'd finally be as important to them as they were to me. The evidence always pointed the other way. When I got engaged 4 years ago, I was excited to share the news at Sunday dinner. Mom spent 20 minutes talking about Marcus's kitchen renovation. Dad asked if my fiancé made decent money. Tyler said, "Don't expect us to travel for the wedding." I ended that engagement for other reasons, but that dinner stayed with me. The first time I wanted something, wanted celebration, wanted joy, they couldn't even pause their own narratives long enough to offer it. I'd been the first call for every crisis and never the first invite to celebrations. Hell, never an invite. Just expectations. Total amount given over 15 years, approximately $340,000. Total amount of gratitude, a text message that said, "We're square, right?" I did it to prove I belonged. The evidence always pointed the other way. When I walked back inside to get my purse, I'd left it on the side table like an idiot. They'd already moved on. The dining room was empty. Voices and laughter drifted from the living room. Someone had put on Christmas music. Bing Crosby crooning about snow. They were fine. Of course they were fine. I could hear Marcus telling a story about his firm's holiday party, everyone laughing at the punchline. Mom's voice rose above the others, delighted. "Oh, Marcus, you didn't." I stood in the doorway. No one noticed me. Then Tyler's wife, Amanda, spotted me. She nudged Tyler, whispered something. The conversation shifted. Sarah. Mom's voice carried that particular tone. Not quite cold, not quite warm. The temperature of obligation. Are you staying for dessert or making a statement? I should have just grabbed my purse and left. But something, pride, stupidity, 15 years of conditioning, pulled me back into that room. I'm not making a statement, I said quietly. I just think maybe I should go. See? Tyler leaned back into the couch, that familiar smirk playing in his mouth. Mom's right. You've been distant lately. Always leaving early. Always getting somewhere else to be. My father sat in his armchair, staring at his coffee cup like it contained the secrets of the universe.
Silent. He wouldn't look at me. I'm not distant, I said.
I'm here every Sunday. I was here for Thanksgiving. I helped with. If you're struggling financially, Sarah, just say so. Marcus cut me off, his lawyer voice in full effect. Reasonable. Concerned. There's no shame in asking for help. We're family. The audacity of that sentence hung in the air. I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. I'm not struggling. I managed. Then, what's the problem? Mom set down her wine glass with deliberate precision. The room quieted. Even the cousins in the corner stopped talking. She looked at me the way she used to when I was 7 and had tracked mud through her clean kitchen. Disappointed. Burdened. Tired of my existence. The problem, Sarah, is that you seem to expect something from this family that we can't give you. She said it slowly, like she wanted each word to carve into me. It's time you stop relying on this family and grew up. Relying. The word echoed in my skull. I'd given them $350,000. I'd saved their house. I'd bailed them out, covered them, carried them for 15 years. And I was the one relying on them. I waited for someone to speak.
To object.
To say, wait, Mom, that's not fair. The silence stretched. Aunt Linda studied her fingernails. Uncle Robert refreshed his Twitter feed. Dad's coffee had to be cold by now, but he kept staring at it. Marcus nodded slightly, like she'd finally articulated what everyone had been thinking. The worst part wasn't what she said. It was the silence after. Agreement. From everyone. Excuse me, I said. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else's throat. I need to use the restroom. No one tried to stop me. The bathroom mirror showed me a woman I barely recognized. 34 years old, wearing the cashmere sweater I'd bought specifically because Mom once said burgundy was sophisticated. My makeup was still perfect. My hair is still in place. Everything about me screamed, trying too hard. I gripped the edge of the sink. The porcelain was cold under my palms. I wasn't being pushed out. The truth crystallized with sudden, brutal clarity. I'd never truly been let in. They'd let me stand at the edge, let me make myself useful, let me pay for the privilege of proximity. But inside, where did it mattered? I never belonged. Not snapped. Snap implies chaos, emotion, loss of control. This was different. This was clarity settling like a key into a lock, tumblers aligning with an audible click. I washed my hands, dried them carefully on the decorative towels Mom keeps for guests, checked my reflection one more time. Then I walked back to that living room, picked up my purse from where I'd set it on the side table, and reached for my coat. Where are you going? Mom's voice had sharpened. She didn't like disruptions to her narrative. Home. Sarah. Dad finally spoke, but I was already moving toward the door. Don't upset your mother, Tyler called after me, mock serious. Someone laughed. I didn't look back. They hadn't earned even a final glance. The December air hit my face like cold water. My hands were steady as I unlocked my car. The engine started on the first try. Christmas lights blurred past as I drove, my street empty and quiet, everyone else still at their family celebrations. They didn't understand yet what I'd just decided. They thought I was running away hurt, that I'd come crawling back with apologies by New Year's, properly chastened and back in my place. They didn't know that for the first time in 15 years, I was done apologizing for existing. What I did next, I did with complete calm. My apartment felt different when I walked in, like it had been waiting for me to finally decide something.
I didn't cry.
I didn't call my best friend to rant. I didn't pour wine and spiral into self-pity. I just stood in my living room, coat still on, key still in my hand, and felt the weight of 15 years lift off my shoulders. Then I started packing. Not everything. Just the things that belonged to the version of myself I'd been performing for them. The burgundy cashmere sweater went into a donation bag. The pearl earrings Mom said made me look respectable. The books on family systems and emotional intelligence I'd bought trying to understand how to be better for them. Every item felt like a line being drawn. Before. After. I know some people will say I should have talked to them first. Had a conversation. Set boundaries like an adult. But I was done talking. I'd been talking for 15 years, and the only person who'd been listening was me. At midnight, I opened my laptop. The blue glow lit up my dark apartment. I made coffee, real coffee, the expensive beans I usually saved for special occasions. Tonight felt special enough. I opened my financial files. The folders I'd been keeping, organized by year, by person, by type of expense. Project management skills applied to family dysfunction. Seeing it all in one place was like watching a lifetime spool out into numbers. Transfers. Loans. Payments. Auto-pays that had been running so long I'd stopped thinking about them as choices. $340,287. That's what family has cost me. I pulled up my bank's website. The property tax auto-pay was first. $14,000 every January. Set it and forget it. My finger hovered over the cancel recurring payment button. They told me to stop relying on them.
So I did.
Cancel. The confirmation email arrived instantly. Your scheduled payment has been canceled. Next, Marcus's loan repayment plan. He talked me into setting up automatic transfers, $500 a month, until he got back on his feet. That was 3 years ago. The feet had apparently purchased a boat. Cancel. Tyler's car insurance. I'd added him to my policy 2 years ago when his rates skyrocketed after an accident. Just temporary, sis. Cancel. The family cell phone plan. All 4 of them on my account because I got a corporate discount. Mom's unlimited data, so she could FaceTime with the grandkids. Dad's because he's retired. Sarah, be reasonable. Cancel. 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 Each confirmation email felt like an exhale I'd been holding for decades. The streaming services I paid for that they all used. Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max. All tied to my credit card. All with profiles I never looked at. Tyler watched more TV on my accounts than I did. Cancel. 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 My nephew's SAT prep course. The one I'd prepaid for the full year because Marcus said it would make such a difference for his future. Cancelled. Refund requested. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd accused me of relying on them while literally relying on me for their daily existence. Their entertainment. Their convenience. Their comfort. I leaned back, coffee cooling in my hands. The apartment was silent except for the hum of my laptop. Then I opened the folder. The important one. The property documents from 6 years ago. I read through them again, even though I'd memorized the relevant sections. Jessica's precise legal language. The reversion clause buried in Section 7, subsection C. In the event that the primary owners attempt to sell, transfer, or refinance the property without written consent of the secondary stakeholder, or in the event of sustained payment default by primary owners on property-related expenses, ownership shall revert to the secondary stakeholder in full, with all prior contributions converted to fair market value equity plus 4% annual interest. I'd laughed when she included it. They're not going to try to screw me, Jess. Then this clause costs you nothing, she'd said. But if I'm right, it's everything. The property taxes. I'd been paying them for 6 years. That was definitely a property-related expense. And now I've canceled the autopay. They had 60 days before the county filed a lien. I pulled up the county assessor's website. Current fair market value of the house, $890,000. My original 30% stake, $267,000. With 6 years of interest and the conversion clause. I sat back. They thought they'd won. Though they'd finally put me in my place, it made me understand my role. Thought I'd come back apologetic and smaller. They thought they held the power. They had no idea that I held the deed.
Well,
Not yet. But in 60 days, if those property taxes went unpaid, I'd own the house. Entirely. Legally.
cleanly.
I closed the laptop. The apartment fell into darkness. My coffee was cold now, but I finished it anyway. Not revenge. Not yet. Preparation. I didn't call them. Didn't text. Didn't send an explanation or a warning or a goodbye. They wanted me to stop relying on the family.
Done.
But the reverse was also true now, and they didn't know it yet. 3 days passed before my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. The first call came from Tyler. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "We're worried about you." What the hell did you do? I was at my desk, reviewing a project timeline. His voice came through my phone speaker, sharp and accusing. In the background, I could hear Mom's voice, high-pitched, frantic. "I did what Mom suggested," I said calmly. "I stopped relying on the family. You canceled everything. The cell phones, the insurance, Sarah, what is wrong with you?" "Nothing's wrong. I'm just growing up." "Isn't that what she wanted?" "This is childish." "This is." I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Marcus this time. I let it go to voicemail. "Sarah, we need to talk about this like adults. You can't just cut off the family because your feelings got hurt. Call me back. Today."
Delete.
Dad's voicemail came that evening. He used his reasonable voice, the one he deployed during business negotiations. "Sweetheart, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Your mother didn't mean anything by what she said. You know how she gets during the holidays, stressed with hosting. Let's all sit down and talk this through. As a family, call me when you get this." Not one of them asked if I was okay. Not one apology. Just concern about what I'd taken away from them. I didn't call back. A week later, a formal letter arrived. Certified mail, requiring signature. It was from Marcus's law firm. Professional letterhead, legal language, his partner's signature at the bottom because even Marcus knew better than to sign it himself. They were requesting clarification about my claim to the property. They wanted full documentation of the alleged arrangement. They were prepared to pursue legal remedies if I didn't cease making representations about ownership. I read it twice, sitting at my kitchen table. Then I called Jessica. "They did what?" She laughed. Actually, I laughed.
Oh, Sarah.
"They just handed you everything." "Explain." "The reversion clause. Remember Section 7, subsection D? Any legal challenge to the secondary stakeholders' interest automatically triggers immediate conversion of ownership. They didn't just fail to pay property taxes. They formally contested your stake. In writing. With legal counsel." My hands were steady as I held the letter. So the property reverts to you. Automatically. No court, no dispute, no waiting. The clause is ironclad. I wrote it specifically for this scenario.
She paused.
"I'm sorry they proved me right." "I'm not," I said. We scheduled the meeting at Norton's Diner on Route 9. Familiar enough to stay grounded, public enough to prevent scenes. Vinyl booths, formica tables, waitresses who'd worked there for 30 years and had seen everything. I arrived 15 minutes early. Ordered coffee. I placed a thick manila folder on the table in front of me. They came in together, a united front. Mom, Dad, Marcus, Tyler, Vanessa, and Amanda had stayed home. Smart. They sat across from me like defendants entering a courtroom. Mom's lipstick was perfect, but I could see the foundation cracking around her eyes. She hadn't been sleeping. "Sarah." Dad started with a reasonable voice again. "Let's all just take a breath, Anne. I'm not here to negotiate," I said. "I'm here to explain." "Explain what?" Tyler leaned back, arms crossed. "How are you throwing a tantrum?" I opened the folder. Pulled out the first section, 15 years of bank statements, highlighted, categorized, tabbed. "This," I said, sliding it across the table, "is what relying on family looks like." Marcus picked it up. His eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. His face went very still. You paid this much? Tyler grabbed a sheet. For all of us? Marcus's legal fees. 7 different payments over 5 years. Total, $31,500.
I pointed to the tab.
That section there shows the payment plan you set up, Marcus. The one that mysteriously stopped after 3 months. Marcus set the papers down carefully, like they might explode. Tyler's car insurance. 2 years, $4,800. Your phone plan, another $2,100. I slid another section toward him. The streaming services you used more than I did. The SAT prep for your kids. The emergency vet bill for Amanda's dog. We didn't ask, Tyler started. Yes. I cut him off. You did. Every single time. I turned to my parents. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. The property taxes. 6 years. $84,000 total. I placed that section in front of Dad. Payments you signed off on. Payments that appear in your annual documents. Payments you somehow forgot to mention to Marcus when he was drafting his threatening letter. Mom's perfect posture was cracking. Sarah, we were going to pay you back. When? The question hung in the air. It's been 6 years, Mom. I pulled out the final document. The property agreement. Jessica's precise legal language, the county seal, both my parents' signatures at the bottom. This is the contract we all signed. The one that gave me a 30% stake in the house in exchange for the money that saved you from foreclosure. I turned to the tab section. This is the reversion clause. The one that activates if you fail to pay property-related expenses or if you legally contest my ownership. I looked at Marcus. You did both. The color drained from his face. The property taxes went unpaid when I canceled the autopay. That started a 60-day clock. Then you sent me a legal letter challenging my stake. I tapped the document. The moment that letter was delivered, you triggered the automatic reversion clause. What does that mean? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. It means the house is mine. Entirely. Legally. As of last Tuesday, when the county processed the paperwork. Silence. The diner sound seemed very loud. Dishes clattering, conversations from other booths, the hiss of the coffee maker. You can't, Marcus started. I didn't, I said quietly. You did. You didn't lose it because of me. You lost it because you tried to take something that wasn't yours. We raised you in that house. Mom's voice cracked. The mask was finally breaking. We gave you everything. You gave me a role, I said. Fixer.
Bank.
Emotional support animal. But you never gave me what I actually wanted. Which was what? Dad's voice was hoarse. To belong. I stood up, smoothed my coat. To matter. To be seen as something other than useful. I pulled out a single dollar bill, placed it on the table next to the coffee I hadn't touched. That's all that remains, I said. Everything else I already gave. For 15 years. And you didn't even see it. I walked toward the door. The cold December air was already seeping through the glass. Sarah? Mom's voice cracked completely. Sarah, please. I stopped. Didn't turn around. You told me to stop relying on the family, I said. You told me to grow up. So I did both. The door closed behind me with a soft chime. They weren't just shocked. They were unmasked. In that diner, in front of strangers who'd watched the whole thing, they'd been reduced to exactly what they were. People who'd confused love with utility and lost both. I got in my car. The engine started smoothly. My hands didn't shake. For the first time in 15 years, I felt light. The silence in the days after was different. Not the cold silence of being shut out, of being erased from conversations and family texts. This was the silence you earn after telling the truth. The kind that settles into your bones and reminds you that peace isn't always loud. My apartment felt different too. Lighter. The morning sun hit my kitchen counter in a way I'd never noticed before, warm and golden, like it was celebrating with me. Jessica called on a Thursday. It's done, she said. County records updated, title transferred, everything locked down. They could appeal, but She paused. They won't. Marcus knows. He'd have to admit in court that they failed to disclose the existing lien, that they challenged ownership in bad faith. No lawyer wants that on record. What about pursuing them for the other amounts? The loans, the payments? We could, she said carefully. We'd probably win. Small claims for some, civil court for others. It would take years and cost them more in legal fees than the actual amounts. I watched the sunlight move across my counter.
No.
No. Justice doesn't need to be loud to be real, I said. They lost what mattered most to them. That's enough. She was quiet for a moment. You're more generous than I'd be. I'm not being generous, I said. I'm free. My father sent an email 2 weeks later.
Short.
No excuses, no lengthy explanations. Sarah, we're figuring things out. Found a condo to rent while we sort through everything. Your mother is processing. Marcus isn't speaking to me. Tyler thinks I should have seen this coming. I should have. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve a response.
But I wanted you to know we're okay.
And that I'm sorry I never saw you clearly when it mattered.
Dad.
I read it 3 times. Looked for the manipulation, the guilt trip, the request for help disguised as an apology. It wasn't there. Maybe they'd grow from this. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe someday we'd have coffee and talk like people who used to know each other. Maybe we wouldn't. Some doors close so you can finally walk through others. I didn't respond.
Not yet.
Maybe not ever. But I saved the email in a folder marked maybe someday and let myself hope, just a little, that people could change when they finally saw the cost of staying the same. Last Saturday, I drove to the coast. 2 hours north, where the beach stretches empty in December and the wind off the ocean tastes like salt and possibility. I walked for miles. No phone, no destination, just me and the rhythm of waves and the cry of gulls overhead. The sand was cold under my feet, the air sharp in my lungs. I felt lighter. Not because I'd won, this wasn't about winning. Because I'd finally put down a weight I was never meant to carry. Family isn't supposed to be a burden you shoulder alone. It's supposed to be a foundation you build together, where everyone contributes, where love flows in more than one direction. I hadn't abandoned my family. I'd stopped abandoning myself. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're invitations for people to meet you with respect, to see you as whole and worthy, to participate in reciprocity instead of extraction. The heaviest chains are the ones we put on ourselves, convinced that if we just carry them a little longer, prove ourselves a little more, sacrifice a little harder, we'll finally earn the love we've been giving freely all along. Some people will only see your worth when you're no longer there. That's not a failure on your part. That's information. Maybe my family will understand someday. Maybe they won't. I walk forward anyway. My life is quieter now. Steadier. Finally my own. I'm dating someone who asks what I need before offering what they think I should want. I took that trip to Iceland I'd been postponing for 5 years. I'm learning to play piano. Badly, joyfully, just for me. The house was sold. I offered them a fair settlement, enough to cover their moving costs, first and last month's rent somewhere modest. Marcus called it generous. I called it closure. I kept enough for a down payment on my own place. Something small, something mine, something no one can take away because they never had to give it in the first place. If this story echoes something in your life, I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Not for validation, I don't need that anymore. But because these stories matter. Because someone reading this might be sitting at their own family table, swallowing their worth to keep the peace, and needs to know. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks you control, and you get to decide who's worthy of the key. If you've been the family bank, the emotional support, the one who gives until there's nothing left and still gets blamed for not giving enough, I see you. Your exhaustion is valid. Your anger is justified. Your decision to walk away is brave. And if you want more stories of people who finally said enough, who set boundaries and survived the fallout, who chose themselves after years of choosing everyone else, subscribe. Because you're not alone. None of us are. The family you're born into teaches you who you are. The family you choose teaches you who you can become. I'm still learning. But for the first time in my life, I'm learning on my own terms. And that makes all the difference.